Hi guys, in our last segments, we accomplished infective meningitis and discussed a case related to it. Hope you all understood well. Now, I'm gonna teach you respiratory tract infections. Since the last few months, we are facing a challenging situation, right? It's the COVID 19 pandemic. The coronavirus infection has changed the everyday life of people in countries around the world. So, this COVID 19 is a severe as well as a life threatening condition, which is also a respiratory tract infection. Worldwide, many deaths were recorded due to the coronavirus infection. Anyway, in this scenario, it is relevant to study regarding the respiratory tract infections. In short, we can denote it as RTI, that is respiratory tract infection. Before going in detail about respiratory tract infections, let us discuss the anatomy and physiology of the respiratory system. So, what is the function of our respiratory system? Why it is so important? For performing our day-to-day activities, we need energy, right? From where this energy derives from? So, the energy derives from the result of the chemical reactions. So, our body needs the presence of oxygen to conduct these chemical reactions, right? So, the waste products of these chemical reactions are carbon dioxide. What does our respiratory system do? Our respiratory system provides a way to the supply of oxygen from the atmospheric air to the body and also provides a route for the excretion of carbon dioxide from the body. The anatomy and physiology of the respiratory tract is quite complex. Each anatomic segment performs in concert with the others and is accountable for a wide variety of physiological responsibilities. These responsibilities may vary with rest, exercise, disease, or health. By studying this, you will get to know our respiratory system is a delicate and complicated system. An understanding of the anatomy and physiology of the respiratory tract is critical to maintain the respiratory health and to treat the respiratory diseases. The respiratory system is comprised of several elements. So, our respiratory system is divided into upper airways and lower airways. So, the upper airways are comprised of elements or organs such as nose, nasal cavity, paranasal cavity, pharynx, and larynx, whereas the lower airways are comprised of trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveolar ducts, and finally the alveoli. The anatomy of the human respiratory system starts at the place where the air first enters the body. So, who is responsible for it? Our nose. Okay, so the nose provides the basic function, that is the sense of smell, and it also have another relevant function, that is filtering, warming, and moistening of the inhaled air. Okay, so at the beginning of the nose we can see the openings, two openings. Okay, so they're called as anterior nares or nostrils. So these are the openings from the nose, nasal cavity. So you can see nasal hairs there which are coated in sticky mucus. So what is the function of these hairs? These hairs at the anterior nares trap the larger particles as well as the smaller particles in the inhaled air, such as dust and bacteria. Okay, so they settle there and adhere to the mucus. So do you have any idea what type of epithelium is found in the nose? So you can see A very vascular ciliated columnar epithelium. So this is also known as ciliated mucous membrane. So here is the functional diagram for ciliated mucous membrane. So from the name itself, which indicates that this ciliated columnar epithelium have columnar cells as well as the cilia. Okay. So this ciliated columnar epithelium is also having a special type of cell. They are called as goblet cells. Okay. So what are they? They are nothing but the modified epithelial cells. So in this figure, the cells which are colored in the yellow are the goblet cells. So what is its function? They secretes mucus continuously to the surface of the epithelium. Okay. So this mucus spread all over the epithelium, and this mucus protects the underlying epithelium from getting any type of the irritation and prevents drying of the epithelium. So our cilia on the epithelium moves regularly. That is, you can see the continuous movement of the cilia. When we are inhaling air, if it's having any type of the particles or particulate matter, that can be trapped by the cilia on the ciliated columnar epithelium. So they will be attached to the mucus on the surface of the epithelium. So how this will be removed from here? So as we told before only, the cilia is moving continuously, right? So this synchronous and regular beating of the cilia wafts the particulate matter with the mucus towards the throat. Okay. So that means the whatever the matter is there, particulate matter is there, that will be removed with mucus to the throat where it is swallowed or coughed up or expectorated. Now, from the nose where the air goes, the next part is the nasal cavity. It enters our nasal cavity. So, in the nasal cavity, you can see the lateral walls of the nasal cavity are projecting outwards. So, they are like curved shells of the bone. Okay. So, there are mainly three separate projecting out projecting outcomes. So they are called as concave or turbinates. Okay, so these projecting concave are three types within the nasal cavity. They are known as superior, middle, and inferior. Okay, so this projecting concave increases the surface area and cause the turbulence spreading inspired air all over the nasal cavity. So by that, because of the large surface area, it maximizes the warming, humidification and filtering of the inhaled air. So this projecting concave or projecting turbinates helps the warming, humidification and filtering of the air by providing maximum surface area. Now, from the nasal cavity, the air has to pass to the next part, right? So that one is the pharynx. So pharynx is nothing but a tube that extends from the base of the skull to the level of the sixth cervical vertebra. So for make it more easier, we can divide the pharynx into three parts, that is nasopharynx. So this is the nasopharynx, and here is the oropharynx, and third one is the laryngopharynx. Okay, so the first one, that is the nasopharynx. This is the nasal part of the pharynx, that is this lies behind the nasal cavity or nose. Okay, so this one is the nasopharynx, whereas oropharynx lies behind the oral cavity, and the entry of food particles while swallowing is prevented by uvula and soft palate. So the front portion is the hard palate and the back portion of the oral cavity is the soft palate. Okay, so here is the uvula. So this uvula blocks the nasal cavity, thus prevents the entry of food particles from the oral cavity to the nasal cavity. Okay, now the third one is the laryngopharynx. So this is the part of the pharynx that connects to the next part, that is larynx. Okay, so that's why they are named as laryngopharynx. So this first one, nasopharynx, is lined with the same epithelium that is found in the nose. Which one is that? Ciliated columnar epithelium, whereas the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx are lined with the stratified squamous epithelium. So this lining protects the underlying tissues from getting abrasive action of the foodstuffs passing through during swallowing. Okay, so pharynx should be remained always open. So how it occurs? So our pharynx is having pharyngeal muscles that help to keep the pharynx permanently open so that breathing is not interfered with. Now from the pharynx, that is after passing the laryngopharynx, the air has to pass larynx. So larynx is nothing but our voice box. So this larynx or voice box links the laryngopharynx and the next part, trachea. Okay, so here you can see a more clear picture of the larynx. So these larynx are made up of irregularly shaped cartilages that are attached to each other. So you can see cartilages such as thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, arytenoid cartilage, epiglottis. Anyway, at the top of the larynx we can see a leaf shaped fibroelastic cartilage. It is known as epiglottis. So it closes off the larynx during swallowing, protects the lungs from accidental inhalation of the foreign subjects. So epiglottis acts as a lid to the larynx. Now coming to the last part of our upper airways, that is the paranasal cavities. So here you can see the paranasal cavities. Okay, so these are nothing but the air-filled extension of the nasal cavity. Paranasal cavities are also known as sinuses. So you can see four paired sinuses. They are named according to the bone in which they are located. That is maxillary sinus, frontal sinus, sphenoid sinus, and ethmoid sinus. So what is its function? They humidify the inhaled air as well as it amplifies the resonance of our sound. So when we are getting cold or fever, common cold or fever or any infection, sometimes our voice will be changed, right? So this happens when these sinuses are filled with the mucus, that is the clogging of the sinus. So this will change our sound. So that's why when we are having common cold or cold, our sound will be changing. So here is a more clear picture of the upper airways. So you can see the movement of air from the nose to the nasal cavity, then to the pharynx, then to larynx. So you can see the soft palate as well. So here you can see the uvula. So in the before picture I think it was not that clear. So this uvula closes the nasal cavity and allows the passage of food directly into the esophagus, thus prevents the entry of food into the nasal cavity. Now coming to the trachea, so it is the beginning of our lower respiratory tract. So you can see the marked area. This is the trachea. So trachea is also known as windpipe. So the tracheas are made up of cartilages. So you can see the marks there. So that indicates the cartilage. So here is a more clear picture for trachea. So tracheas are made up of cartilages, right? So you can see the C-shaped cartilage rings here. So in between these cartilages there are soft tissues. So these soft tissue bands in between cartilages allow flexibility so that we can move our neck and head without obstructing or kinking the trachea. So behind this you can see the esophagus, right? So when we are swallowing food, this lumen of the esophagus is swelled, and at that time the trachea will be constricted with the help of these cartilage rings. So the cartilages in the trachea helps to hold the trachea permanently open. Okay, so what will be the lining of the trachea? So as in the nose or nasopharynx, it is also having the same epithelium. Which one? Ciliated columnar epithelium. So that is also contains goblet cells. So here you can see the mucociliary escalator mechanism. That is nothing but the wafting of the mucus by the synchronous and regular beating of the cilia towards the throat where it is swallowed or coughed up. Okay, so that one is known as MCE, mucociliary escalator mechanism. So this is the first defense mechanism of the lungs. So as in the nose, warming, humidifying and filtering continues in the trachea as well. Although the air is normally saturated and at body temperature when it reaches the trachea. So at the level of carina, so this is the cartilage at the end of the trachea. At the level of carina, the trachea bifurcates into right bronchus as well as left bronchus. So bifurcates means it divides or branches into the right and left bronchus. So at the level of carina, you can see the branching of bronchi. The next part is the fundamental for our respiratory system, that is lungs. The human lungs are amazing feats of nature, right? They pump vital oxygen through airways and into the bloodstream every second of every day. Without this ability, humans could not survive on earth. Am I right? So, our lower respiratory tract is enclosed within the thoracic cavity, which is composed of the sternum anteriorly, that is, from the back side. Our thoracic cavity is protected with sternum. Sorry, from the front side, our thoracic cavity is protected with the sternum, that is anteriorly. Then from back side, that is posteriorly, it is protected with the vertebral column, then mediastinum and the diaphragm. So here you can see the diaphragm. So this diaphragm divides the thorax from the abdomen and also the ribs with their intercostal spaces. You can see the tips of the ribs here. So this all protects our lungs from getting any damage or shock. So the rib cage protects not only the lungs, also heart and other great vessels from getting damage. So humans are having a pair of lungs, that is left and right lungs. So the lungs are covered with a membrane that is called as pleural membrane. So the innermost layer of the lungs are covered with visceral pleura and the thoracic cavity is covered with parietal pleura, and the space between visceral pleura and the parietal pleura is known as pleural cavity, and you can see it is filled with the pleural fluid. So normally it is very thin layer, and when we are getting any type of infection or inflammation, there you can see the swelling of the pleural cavity. So that indicates infection or inflammation. So here you can see the horizontal and oblique fissures that divides our lungs into different lobes. Okay, so in the right lung you can see the oblique fissure and horizontal fissures divides the lungs into right upper lobe, right middle lobe, as well as the right lower lobe. Whereas for the left lung, the oblique fissure divides the left lung into left upper lobe, then the left lower lobe. So each lobe is divided into several wedge-shaped bronchopulmonary segments. So each bronchopulmonary segment has a bronchus, artery and a vein. Okay, so the main bronchus divides into three different branches in case of right lung. So each segment goes to the right upper lobe, right middle lobe and the right lower lobe. Whereas for the left lung, the branches goes to the left upper lobe and left lower lobe. So our right main bronchus is wider, shorter and are more vertical than the left main bronchus. So whatever the inhaled material is there, by chance any inhaled material is there, it is more likely to enter the right main bronchus than the left main bronchus. Okay, so we told that our right bronchus is wider and shorter, whereas the left bronchus is narrower and longer. So they leaves the carina at a more abrupt angle. So these branches of the bronchi further divides into 22 generations. So they can be smaller bronchioles, terminal bronchioles, respiratory bronchioles, alveolar duct, and finally alveoli. The remaining we will discuss in the next segments. Thank you.